Hello and you're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On the show, we'll be taking a look at some of the biggest business and economic developments for the week and how they affect the Nigerian economy and the average citizen. My name is Chamun Dabeng and I'll be your host. We're starting the show off with the stock market analysis for Friday. The sell-side interest on the bourse outpaced demand, causing the Nigerian stock market to lose roughly 160 billion naira during the trading week that ended on Friday, August 19th. In the last trading week under examination, the market fell by 0.59% after 4 days of losses compared to 1 day of gains. Most equities were offered in the insurance, consumer goods and oil gas sector, while industrial and financial companies were in high demand. The market has dropped 1.98% year to date, and the positive return for the year has fallen to 15.58%. The all-share index ASI and market capitalization of the Nigerian Exchange Limited (NGX) decreased from their respective week open highs of 49,664.07 points and 26.787 trillion naira to 49,370.62 points and 26.628 trillion naira. The top three gainers for the week were Jaiz Bank, ICO, and Academy, up by 5.95, 3.64, and 1.96% respectively. And for the top three losers, UPL, IMG, and Japan Gold were down by 9.95, 9.7 and 9.38% respectively. Well, that's all for the stock market. We'll take a short break, and when we get back, we'll be moving on to our main discussion. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. And once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Well, on Wednesday, the National Union of Electricity Employees and Senior Staff Association of Electricity and Allied Companies went on an industrial strike, resulting in a nationwide blackout. Now, the Ministry of Labor was able to intervene in the matter, and the groups have decided to suspend the strike for the next 2 weeks while the involved parties work towards a solution. Now, joining me on the show to dissect the industrial issues as well as analyze the implications is leadership and export consultant Collins Nwosu and President Nigeria Consumer Protection Network Kunle Kola Olubiyo. You're both welcome to the show. Now, I'm very sure many of us actually saw that social media video. You could actually see the employees switching off the systems. Now, what do you guys make of this situation? Let me start off with you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think it speaks to deeper issues. It really speaks to deeper issues, because when it gets to the point where a critical infrastructure such as power and those who are saddled with the responsibility of delivering that service to the Nigerian people say, hey, look, you know what? We have a grievance, we have a grouse, we have something that is of concern to us, and the only way they think that they can deal with it is to, set the nation back, then there's a major problem. So we're no longer just talking about power issues, we're talking about patriotism, we're talking about the understanding of the import of whoever has any particular responsibility and how it affects the next person, how it affects the economy. So imagine already we're dealing with power deficits, right? We're dealing with, most countries that grow, if we talk about other African nations, one that comes to mind quickly will be Egypt and their industrial plan and where they are today in terms of what they've done in industry. And even if you look at the stock market trends, you see that most people are looking to invest in manufacturing. So there's a lot that has to do with industry, and it rides on energy. So I think whatever the grouse was or whatever the grouse is, labor has to begin to think of other ways of solving these problems rather than just saying, hey, you know what, we're going to strike, shut down the schools, we're going to strike, shut down the hospitals, we're going to strike, shut down the country, as it were, and begin to say, okay, what are the things that caused us to get to where we are today, right? Since I was in primary school, every time labor strikes, we're talking salaries, we're talking salary increase. So I'll just give an example. If you were earning 10,000 naira as a salary earner, 10,000 naira every month, right? And that was 10,000 that is equivalent to 10,000 pounds. or 10,000 naira is equivalent to $10,000, would we be complaining? But now if you're earning 1 million naira and it's equivalent to maybe $1,000 or 1,000 pounds, you have reason to complain. So what should we be looking at? Should we be looking at salary increase, or should we be saying, look, there are certain things that need to be done that ensure that my take home actually takes me home? So that's my view on this. We have to stop looking at this short term, me, and start looking at what is it in the wider scope of things that is causing, that has brought us to where we are, and how can we deal with it?
All right, Mr. Kunle, this is definitely your constituency. This is your, your sector. Now, what do you make of this situation? It's a very drastic step to take to actually shut down the power for a nation.
Well, to us, as for the end user's point of view, it's appalling and it's painful that what's supposed to be like localized issues were brought to the fore and to a point of global embarrassment. The issues that the Labour raised in the last few days, they are legacy issues. If you have a sector that was privatized in any part of the world, government must not be seen to be deceptive. Governance must come with integrity. We must have regard for enforcement of simple gentleman agreement, sanctity of contract, enforceability of contract. I've been involved in DFID project, and one of the major concerns about ease of doing business is that if you do a contract with Nigerians, typically just day-to-day business activities, you sign an agreement, you want to have a deal, as soon as, even if it's in black and white, we have this culture of impunity of once you sign an agreement, you're having a deal, is either how to take the person out or how to edge the person out. It is wrong, it's the culture that needs to change, and we are taking this to governance. Now, Labour raised issues pre-privatization. And the consideration for privatization is that we are going to do X, Y thing. And if in 2013, government could not fulfill our obligation, they gave 6 years leverage windows. And 2019, Labour made an attempt to shut down. And when they were making an attempt to shut down the same way, this is just partial shutdown, 6-8 hours. When they made an attempt to shut down, the then Speaker of House of Rep and of Government intervened and said, give us 3 months. And if you look at it from 2019 to date, it's 3 years. So it is fundamentally our culture of impunity. Individuals bring their mindset to governance. Mr. President has never proven to be everywhere. There's what they call delegated power in administrative law. He has embodied some people, Minister of Labour, Minister of Power, and what have you. And so they need to stop the culture of misdirecting Mr. President. So in June 1993, we had a similar experience. Labour shut down because of political crisis. And at a point, the military regime used military armed tactics, forced Kokori out, forced everybody out, and we never knew what happened. There are critical components of Kaduna Refinery, Port Harcourt Refinery that could be removed or cannibalized. And up to today, all the turnaround maintenances that are taking place, Nigeria never recovered. Because if you have some turbine, if you have some machineries that continually work, you don't need to shut them down. Shutting them down for 6-8 months was at a great loss. And that is why we are where we are today. So government should rise above board. Before now, every day we engage the leadership of Labour, Ayuba, Ajero. We are in talk, we interact, we compare notes, we do brinksmanship. Government should come to the round table with Labour. And let's sort out these issues. These are things that could create toxic environment.
Yeah.
If a workforce is disillusioned, what are the issues that Labour have raised? Let's go to it.
All right, before we get into that, like you said, it could become toxic, but the situation seems to be already toxic. If the workers are now coming out to clients, we have welfare issues.
A flash in the pan. What we are seeing is flash in the pan.
All right, but before we get into that, we do have a report. Let's take a look at it.
The issues that we had, I thank the Honorable Minister and the Minister of State for Power for their maturity in handling these issues that were brought up. Yes, these issues could have been tackled earlier on if there was the rightful communication with all parties. But well, as we have said, we've been given 2 weeks to wish to report back to the full House. Well, we assure the nation that such crisis will be nipped in the bud before it escalates.
So you have industry people who are workers like any other set of workers who feel that the financial entitlements that they have is not satisfactory. You only have to negotiate with them. And if indeed those financial entitlements are not satisfactory, then there's an issue. Because we need to understand that there's an illiquidity in the sector, which means that the sector itself does not have enough money to take care of itself and keep oiling itself, which is why a lot of times government has had to intervene. So there are certain fundamentals that need to be taken into place. Is that the sector must be first made liquid. And to make it liquid, we're talking about people stopping theft. So because when you have a neighbor who has bypassed the meter, he's not necessarily intelligent, he's circumventing the system because somebody is going to pay anyway. You understand? It costs something to get there, and if they don't get it back. So that's another thing. Then there is the issue of the actual costs. There are certain things in the components of the tariff that are dollar-based. So every time, like now dollar was 170 a couple of years ago, is now 700. That also reflects in the cost of production.
All right. Yes, very interesting take from Mr. Olabode and also Mr. Olajide on the situation right there. Now, the first spokesperson from the Ministry of Labour, that is Mr. Olajide, he spoke about, settling the issues in the next 2 weeks. But how hopeful should Nigerians be that this will not reoccur in the next 2 weeks? Now, you're about to bring up the key motives for this strike. Now, can we get into that?
The first mistake we made is that we're supposed to privatize wholly. There are 3 legs of the value chain, the upstream and the downstream. Transmission Company of Nigeria, at worst, we will have to do unbundling. Now, because of the attraction, the trappings of corruption, from the public point of view, that sector was left alone for padding of budget. That's our point of view. And so since we did not privatize, if we have privatized, if we have broken down transmission management into, regional hubs, and in fact, what the labor they are even asking of now, maybe with the private sector model, they will have gotten more. So it's affecting the level of efficiency in the sector. But as it is now, the issue the labor is talking about they are raising is that sometimes about 5-7 years ago at NAC, officers that moved from different sectors to NAC, that got to the rank of principal managers, there were vacancies for AGM and GMs. And instead of promoting them, haven't trained them, haven't acquired cognate experience, they advertised and brought in freshers. So what the labor is saying is that there is condition of service, there is scheme of service, there's public service rules, and these are benchmark. And they had agreement, pre-privatization. It was the basis on which the labor key in. And so if government have challenges or issues, no party will have their position cast in stone. No party will have their position cast in stone. So in negotiation, brinksmanship or give and take, if government have responded to 17 correspondences from labor between 2019 to date, even the warning that was given, the last warning by labor was in May. Labor is not ASU. Aviation sector is not ASU. ASU does not have anything to hold us to ransom. Governments must come to the round table with labor and in overall national interest and make sure that this cancer is ostracized once and for all.
All right, Mr. Collins, coming to you. Now, earlier on, you spoke about Nigerians, finding a different way to get what they need without having to, basically put the country at a standstill. Now, like he said, there have been numerous correspondences that have been sent to the Ministry of Labour, to all the authorities that, they needed to reach out to. But at the end of the day, there was really no response. Of course, I do not support the actions of the workers because, the whole nationwide blackout, of course, it cost us. But what other ways can Nigerian citizens working in, these very important sectors get the attention of the government?
I think there are quite a number of things that need to happen. First of all is to recognize that virtually everything rises and falls on leadership. So at a national level, as a country, as a sovereign state, we cannot say, hey, look, our presidency, the legislature should not look into this. It's important because if they do not see the country as a vehicle that needs to be driven to a particular destination, then you'll see that different arms would run anyhow. So power is like maybe, let's say, the tires or the engine, education is another part of the vehicle. So this vehicle called Nigeria has to be handled properly by those who own it, so to speak, those who are in position of leadership. So we need to service it. So we cannot take away the role of leadership. So it's important that first, at this point, this is now the place where we need to remedy the issue. And what are those issues? So if you're looking at power generation, power transmission, power distribution, these are three things. So if the executive arm has said, hey, look, we're going to take these things off our executive list and unbundle them, they might as well do so, and do so quickly, so that we begin to bring liquidity into the system. They might as well say that these policy frameworks that we have put in place, we're not going to tomorrow upturn them, so that there's confidence from investors, because people want to invest. I mean, the energy gap in Nigeria is so huge, and energy is huge business everywhere across the world. So when you're talking oil and gas, it's energy. I mean, we power ourselves by gas, and just about what 10 megawatts is produced by wind. So first, leadership must recognize that, look, the buck stops with us at this point. Next is what did we promise? Okay, how can we start fulfilling our promises? That's important. That's really, really important. Now, having said that, I'm also saying that we have had a history of labor going on these kinds of forced loggerheads with the leadership based on promises not kept. So it means that two things need to be dealt with. One, our leaders need to begin to keep promises. Those are the things that turn the wheels around. Because if we do that, there's more wealth. There's much more wealth. So while we're struggling with 1 trillion, when we could actually have 50 trillion, there's much more wealth to be created. Secondly, labor in its entirety, when they meet, also need to look at the country as a vehicle. And I say that because if the tire says, hey, look, I'm going to stop moving, what happens when the engine says I'm going to stop moving, right? So we have to see it as a vehicle and say, hey, you know what? The things that are stopping us from moving or causing us to have engine problems, tire problems, is that the roads have not been done, right? So labor as a whole says, if we're going to take action, then it is that we want to ensure that the road is done so that it helps all of us. That's where I'm coming from. That's the long-term view that those in these positions of authority, smaller positions of authority, whether it is energy unions, whether it is the education unions, whether it is the health unions, they need to start looking at the country as a country and not just looking at the country from their sectors. So, because if we continue to do that, they will continue to have sectorized actions that affect everybody. The ear cannot say it's not part of the body or begin to just treat me differently. Nor can the toe do that. The whole body has to be taken care of. So that's my position. So first, let our leadership look at this and say, look, we need to deal with this. For mergers, acquisitions, there are agreements that need to be done, and labor is often carried along. That means that promises were made which have not been kept from 2013 to date. So these promises need to be kept, and we have to find ways of keeping them. And remember, Mr. Olabode also mentioned, say, dollar issues.
Yes.
Now, we point out to the fact that I said beyond the sector, we have to look at the country and say there are certain things that need to be fixed. Otherwise, we're just going to be in a catch-22. We keep going up. Yeah.
All right, so I have a few questions around the privatization exercise. Now it's been about, almost 7 years, 10 years thereabout. Is it time for this exercise to be reviewed? And also, how many other countries actually have a power sector that has been privatized as opposed to having the government run it? Let me get your take on that, Mr. Kudli.
Well, thank you very much. You cannot build something on nothing. From our own point of view, the privatization exercise, the process, the model is a sham. The global benchmark or KPIs were lowered. The original intention is after the expression of interest, we will have looked for the best. Even within Nigeria, investors that have run businesses, permit me to say, the Alicos, the Dangotes are Nigerian brand, and they are global brand. People competed for the licenses. Now you cannot acquire a sector with almost 80% credit financing and lower equity. They were supposed to be benchmarked on financial and technical due diligence. It was zero. A company involved in corporate gift, banana sellers, cocoa sellers, winning bidding over people that have been involved in power business. They had no cognate experience. They've never been involved in anywhere in the world in the power business. So now, by next year, they have 10 years moratorium. In 2018, we're supposed to do what they call midterm review. We have gone beyond that. This regime of licenses will expire by 2023 and want to take our country back. Let's do a new round. The electricity sector policy framework, Electricity Power Sector Reform Act, were framed with bobby traps and lacunas from guys then in BPE with mischief and conflict of interest. And we can say it, we have said it repeatedly, without fear of contradiction. Doing that, they frame act with themselves in mind. Our eyes were not open to the fact that what happened in the power sector is not different from the PID, where a foreigner will prepare a draft agreement, give to Nigerians, and they'll say, this is my price. And once they give the price, we need to be patriotic to Nigeria. They will adopt such this thing with Oster clauses, hook, line, and sinker. The country has given so much to us, and Nigeria is an elephant that has fallen down. Everybody is bringing the UTC knife, the cutlasses to cut it, instead of looking for how to bring back the country on its feet. So we need to be patriotic. That is what makes nation to grow. So by 2023, we are looking for new rounds of investors. They are there in Nigeria who are waiting, not rent-seeking. Abuja Electricity makes 10 to 15 billion a month. Even the former chairman, my interaction, he complained. Malami is not even aware of the returns. No board meeting, no procedure, no KPIs, weak regulatory ecosystem. We cannot operate like that and expect to get results. Electricity is the life wire of any nation. And if you get it right with electricity, we are doing 4,000 to 5,800 megawatts at the peak. If we go to 6,000, as a member of Technical Investigative Panel on Power System collapses 2013, the grid will collapse. So it's really a global embarrassment. There are lots that we cannot exhaust in one breath.
Of course.
When the time comes, we will all come with our strong reasons and make sure that Nigeria began to work again.
All right, Mr. Collins, now there has been money that has been pumped into this sector several times by the federal government, and we do still need to...
2.9 trillion.
There you go. You just threw out the number there for us. All right. So, yes, it has been pumped into a private sector by the federal government on several occasions. Now, at what point are we going to get it right? I mean, there's been partnerships even with international companies, and still our power sector is, for lack of a better word, failing.
He mentioned KPIs, so key performance indicators. The thing is, when you tell an organization, look, I'm going to give you this and I expect this in return, then I must hold them responsible to give me that result. If I do not hold them responsible, then that means that I've given them room to play about. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So what were the key performance indicators? Midterm reviews have been done and said, okay, look, from this point to this point, you're meant to do A, B, C, D, E. If there are things, let us discuss. And that's what business partners do, right? But if there are things that you ought to have done that were clearly within your power to carry out, and you did not carry them out, why didn't you do so? So we must learn to enforce. We must learn to enforce the things that we have put in place, the policy frameworks that we put in place, even if they are frail, as it seems, but enforcing them creates the sense of responsibility in those who are there. Let's give a simple example. You come to the traffic light, everybody's beating the traffic light. So if the traffic police and every other person decides to start arresting people for beating the traffic light, taking out points from people's driver's license, impounding vehicles, I can assure you that just give it another couple of weeks and people are going to begin to comply. After all, when you had to do paid parking in Abuja,
Yeah.
people had to park very well. Shortly after, you would notice that people were no longer blocking the roads. Because if you don't park well, they charge you. Even when you park, you still have to pay. So people somehow adjusted and learned how to park. Even when it was removed, people were still parking straight. People were still parking right till today.
There was remedial fear of being charged.
So we have to learn to start doing enforcements.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues that we have we have an agreement we don't enforce. We have a policy we don't enforce. We have a law we don't enforce. So enforcement is, I'm not speaking about creating new laws and creating new policy frameworks, but what do we have right now? Can we enforce it? Even if you enforce 10%, you're going to see a level of compliance. So the level of compliance is usually, the level of impact is usually 20, is usually a 20-80 rule. So even if you do 20% enforcement, you will see an 80% rise in the results that we have, and that's what needs to be happening right now.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to continue on that discussion. But a big thank you to my guests in the studio. Thank you so much to our export and leadership consultant in the studio with us. And we also had the President, Nigeria Consumer Protection Network, Mr. Kunle Kola Olubio. Thank you so much to both of you for being a part of the show. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to catch us on our social media pages. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Just click like, subscribe, comment. We want to hear from you. Well, we've come to the end of our show for today. My name is Chamun Dabeng. Please do come back again. Let's talk numbers.